I spent 2 days preparing my sister Lauren's 30th birthday dinner. 3 courses for 30 guests. As the last dessert plate left my hands, my father stood with his wine glass. He cleared his throat and announced that the family had voted. I was permanently banned from cooking for family events. My food was subpar. Lauren added that nobody actually enjoyed eating what I made. 30 pairs of eyes turned toward me. I smiled, said one word, understood, and walked out the front door. The drive home felt surreal. My hands gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. I kept replaying the moment, over and over, the way my father's voice had carried across the dining room, the smirk on Lauren's face, the shocked expressions of aunts, uncles, cousins, and family friends who had just finished eating the meal I'd poured my heart into. I'm 32 years old. I've been cooking for this family since I was 20. Every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday, anniversary, graduation, and random Sunday dinner. 12 years of my life spent in their kitchens, preparing meals without a single dollar of compensation. They called it family contribution. I called it love. But I'm not just someone who likes to cook. I'm a professionally trained chef. I attended the Culinary Institute of America. I work as a sous chef at Meridian, one of the most upscale restaurants downtown. I've dedicated my entire adult life to the craft of cooking. And my own family just told me, in front of 30 people, that my food isn't good enough. When I got home to my apartment, I sat in my car for 20 minutes before I could move. Then something shifted inside me. I walked upstairs, opened my phone, and blocked every single family member's number. My parents, Lauren, my aunts and uncles, every cousin. I blocked them on social media too. Every platform. The apartment felt different that night. Quieter, but also lighter somehow. For the first time in 12 years, I didn't have a family obligation hanging over my head. No one was going to call asking me to bring 3 side dishes to a potluck. No one was going to text asking if I could whip up a last-minute meal for surprise guests. The silence was strange, but it was mine. I barely slept. When I finally drifted off around 4 in the morning, I dreamed about walking through an empty kitchen. No timers, no requests, no criticism, just space. The next 2 weeks passed in a blur of freedom I hadn't experienced since before culinary school. I went out with friends I'd been neglecting for years. My best friend Sarah and I had dinner at a new Thai place that had just opened. We laughed until our stomachs hurt. I realized I couldn't remember the last time I'd done that. At work, something changed too. Chef Marcus pulled me aside after service one night and told me the 2 new menu items I'd developed were the most creative dishes he'd seen from me in months. One was a pan-seared scallop with a brown butter vinaigrette and crispy prosciutto. The other was a deconstructed apple tart with bourbon caramel and vanilla bean ice cream. Both became instant bestsellers. I started sketching plans for my own restaurant. Something I'd dreamed about since culinary school but never had time to pursue. I'd always been too busy cooking for family events, too exhausted from fulfilling their endless requests. Now, sitting at my kitchen table with a glass of wine and a notebook, I let myself imagine what it could look like. The menu, the atmosphere, the name. But in the back of my mind, I knew what was coming. Thanksgiving was 2 weeks away. I'd cooked Thanksgiving dinner for 25 family members every single year since I graduated culinary school. Turkey, stuffing, mashed potatoes, green bean casserole, cranberry sauce, 3 kinds of pie. The whole production took me 3 days of prep work. Part of me wondered if they'd reach out. Part of me hoped they wouldn't. I felt nervous but determined. Whatever happened, I was going to stand firm. On day 14, I came home from work at 10 at night. I'd stayed late helping train a new line cook. I was exhausted, my feet aching, my chef's coat splattered with sauce stains. I rounded the corner to my apartment building and stopped dead. My parents were sitting on the front steps, both of them. My mother's arms were crossed. My father was checking his watch with an irritated expression. They'd been waiting, I later found out, for 3 hours. My stomach dropped. I thought about turning around and leaving. But where would I go? This was my home. I walked up slowly. My mother stood first, not with warmth or concern, but with annoyance etched across her face. "We need to discuss Thanksgiving," she said. You can't just abandon the family. My father stood too, brushing off his pants. You're being childish, he added. We need you to cook. Lauren can't handle it. I stared at them. They were acting like the birthday party humiliation had never happened, like they hadn't publicly banned me from cooking and told me my food was terrible in front of 30 witnesses. Now, 2 weeks later, they needed me. My mother held out a piece of paper. A shopping list. Turkey, 20 pounds. Heavy cream, 2 quarts. Butter, 4 pounds. The list went on and on. She thrust it toward me. I didn't take it. Bella, my father said, his voice taking on that warning tone I knew from childhood. Don't make this harder than it needs to be. I'm not cooking Thanksgiving, I said quietly. My mother's face transformed. The irritation shifted to something colder, something calculated. You're making a huge mistake, she said, her voice dropping low. Family is everything. You'll regret this. She stepped closer. I could smell her perfume, the same one she'd worn my entire life. You think you can just walk away from us? She shook her head slowly. You'll come crawling back. You always do. I moved past them and unlocked the building door. I walked inside without looking back, but my hands were shaking so hard I could barely get my apartment key into the lock. Thanksgiving week arrived with an avalanche of voicemails I couldn't hear but could see piling up. I'd blocked their numbers, but somehow messages still appeared as notifications. 15, 20, 30. I deleted them all without listening. I'd volunteered to work Thanksgiving at Meridian. We did a special prix-fixe menu for the holiday. It was one of our busiest nights of the year, and I was grateful for the distraction. I stayed in the kitchen from noon until midnight, my hands busy with reductions and plating, my mind too occupied to wander. But my coworker Jessica pulled me aside during a quiet moment. Her face was concerned. Hey, she said. My mom was asking about you. Are you okay? I'm fine, I told her. Why? She hesitated. She heard some stuff at church. About you having some kind of breakdown? My blood went cold. What? Jessica looked uncomfortable. Something about you cutting off your family without warning, and your mom being really worried because you're not well? I felt like the floor had dropped out from under me. My mother wasn't sick. My mother was perfectly healthy. But she'd apparently started telling people at church, where half the congregation knew me from childhood, that I was mentally unstable. I tried to explain the truth to Jessica. About the birthday party, about the humiliation, about being banned from cooking and then expected to cater Thanksgiving like nothing had happened. Jessica believed me, but she also told me the rumors were spreading fast. Over the next 2 weeks, I started noticing changes. Friends I'd known for years were suddenly distant. Sarah called me one afternoon, her voice careful. I heard something, she said. Is everything okay with you and your family? More people started asking if I was okay. At the grocery store, I ran into my former neighbor, Mrs. Patterson. She looked at me with such pity I wanted to disappear. I heard about your troubles, dear, she said, patting my arm. I hope you get the help you need. Help? I wasn't the one who needed help. But try explaining that when someone has already decided you're unstable. My mother had crafted a narrative. In her version, I'd cut off the family without warning for no reason. I'd refused to help during a crisis. She painted herself as a concerned mother, dealing with a troubled daughter. There was no mention of the birthday party. No mention of the public humiliation. No mention of showing up at my apartment with demands and threats. I was the villain in her story. Early December, I made the mistake of checking social media. I'd been avoiding it, but curiosity got the better of me. That's when I saw the post. Lauren, smiling next to a man I'd never met, a diamond ring catching the light on her left hand. The caption read, "He said yes, planning the wedding of my dreams." 200 likes, hundreds of comments congratulating her. And then I saw them. Multiple people asking, "Will Bella cater the wedding?" Lauren had responded publicly. If she can be mature about things. My hands were shaking as I read through the comments. People I'd known my whole life talking about me like I was a problem that needed to be solved. Poor Lauren, one said. Hopefully her sister comes around. Another. Family drama is so sad. Praying they work it out. I closed the app and threw my phone across the room. 3 days later, my phone rang from a number I didn't recognize. Against my better judgment, I answered. Bella. It was Lauren's voice. Syrupy sweet. Fake. I need you to cater my engagement party. 75 guests, January 20th. No, I said immediately. The sweetness vanished. You're really going to do this? She snapped. After everything this family has done for you? It's the least you can do after embarrassing us. I hung up. Within 24 hours, the rumors intensified. Suddenly people were saying I'd stolen money from the family, that I had a drug problem. Complete fabrications, but they spread like wildfire through our community. I started getting strange looks at the coffee shop I'd been going to for 5 years. The barista, who usually knew my order by heart, suddenly acted like she'd never seen me before. At work, things got worse. Chef Marcus called me into his office one afternoon in mid-December. His expression was serious. Bella, he said, I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest with me. My heart was pounding. Okay, I said. Someone contacted the restaurant. They claimed you have substance abuse issues. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. What? He held up a hand. I don't believe it. You're one of my best chefs. But I have to take it seriously. The restaurant's reputation is on the line. Who called? I demanded. He wouldn't tell me. But he asked me to take some time off. Just until things settle down, he said. It's not a firing, just a temporary leave. I walked out of his office in a daze. Temporary leave, no paycheck, right before Christmas. My savings started hemorrhaging. Rent in my downtown apartment was $1,500 a month. I had utilities, car insurance, groceries. I had maybe 3 weeks of expenses covered if I was extremely careful. The stress was crushing. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I was losing weight I didn't have to lose. Friends stopped responding to my texts. I was uninvited from a New Year's Eve party I'd been looking forward to for weeks. The host, Amy, apologized but said there was too much drama right now. She didn't want to deal with it. I spent New Year's Eve alone in my apartment, watching the ball drop on a television screen while eating microwaved soup. I thought about my life a year ago. I'd been surrounded by family, cooking a feast for 20 people. Now I was completely alone. Early January, I decided to fight back. I wrote a long post on social media explaining my side of the story. I described the birthday party in detail, the public humiliation, the ban on cooking, the hypocrisy of being asked to cater Thanksgiving 2 weeks later. I asked people to please stop believing lies about me. I hit post and waited. The response was immediate and devastating. My mother responded within an hour with her own post. She wrote about being a grieving parent who had lost her daughter to mental illness. She talked about trying everything to help me. Therapy, medication, support. All lies, every word. But she wrote with such emotion, such apparent heartbreak, that people ate it up. The sympathy swung entirely in her direction. Comments poured in supporting her. Stay strong. You're such a good mother. I'm praying for you and your family. One person even wrote, sometimes you have to love them from a distance. My post, by contrast, made me look vindictive and unstable. Attacking my family publicly, airing private grievances, making wild accusations. Within 48 hours, I'd become the villain in everyone's eyes. Then Chef Marcus called. His voice was tight, uncomfortable. Bella, he said, the owner saw your post. He also saw your mother's response. And? I asked, already knowing where this was going. The owner has family connections to your parents, through business circles. He can't have this kind of drama associated with the restaurant. I'm sorry, Bella. I really am. But he's letting you go, officially. I was fired. I sat on my apartment floor and cried for 3 hours straight. I had no job, no references. My professional reputation was destroyed. The food industry in this city wasn't that big. Word traveled fast. I'd be lucky to get hired washing dishes at this point. My solution, defending myself publicly, had made everything catastrophically worse. January turned into a nightmare. I applied to 15 restaurants, not a single callback. My resume was solid. My experience was excellent. But my reputation had been poisoned. I heard through a former coworker that managers were calling each other, warning about the chef with drama, the chef with mental health issues, the chef who attacked her family online. None of it was true. But truth didn't matter anymore. I started selling my belongings online. My nice mixer, my knife set, my television, a leather jacket I'd saved up for 3 years to buy. Each sale felt like losing another piece of myself, but I needed to eat. I needed to pay rent. By late January, I had $800 in my bank account. Rent was due in 2 weeks. $1,500. The math didn't work. I stopped buying groceries and started eating rice and canned beans. I lost 12 pounds in 3 weeks. My landlord was a middle-aged man named Mr. Kowalski who'd always been kind but firm about rent. When I was 2 days late because I'd used my last money to buy food, he served me an eviction notice. 30 days to pay or leave. I had nowhere to go. My friends had abandoned me. My family had destroyed me. I couldn't afford a new apartment even if I found one. I was staring at homelessness. That night, I did something I swore I'd never do. I called my mother. I was crying before she even answered. When she picked up, I could barely speak. "Mom," I said, "I need help, please." Her voice was cold, satisfied. "I knew you'd come crawling back." "I'm going to be evicted," I sobbed. "I don't have anywhere to go. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I'll apologize to everyone. Just please help me." There was a long pause. Then she said, "We'll discuss terms." Terms. Like I was negotiating a business deal instead of begging for help from my own mother. She laid them out one by one. I had to come to Sunday dinner and apologize to the entire family. Not just say sorry, but admit I'd been going through a mental health crisis. I had to agree to cater Lauren's wedding in June. 400 guests, no compensation. She estimated it would take months of preparation. If I did all of this, the family would forgive me and help me get back on my feet. I had no choice. I agreed to everything. Sunday dinner was the most humiliating experience of my life. I walked into my parents' house and found 20 extended family members waiting. They all stared at me as I entered. My mother directed me to stand in front of the fireplace while everyone Saturday. I apologized. I said I'd been going through a difficult time, that I wasn't myself, that I was grateful for their patience and understanding. Every word felt like swallowing glass. Lauren sat on the couch, smirking. My father nodded approvingly. My mother hugged me afterward and whispered in my ear, "This is where you belong, under our guidance." I moved back into my childhood bedroom that week. I'd had to abandon my apartment, sell, or donate most of my possessions. At 32 years old, I was living with my parents again, sleeping in a twin bed under posters I'd hung when I was 16. But at least I had shelter. At least I had food. That's what I told myself every night as I stared at the glow in the dark stars on my ceiling. February meant wedding planning. Lauren's wedding was scheduled for June 15th. 400 guests. She wanted past hors d'oeuvres during cocktail hour, a 5-course plated dinner, a dessert bar with 8 different options. It was an enormous undertaking. I created detailed spreadsheets, planned the menu, coordinated with vendors, tested recipes in my parents' kitchen. Lauren was demanding and cruel throughout the entire process. She criticized everything. The shrimp were too small. The beef wasn't tender enough. The desserts weren't creative enough. She treated me like hired help. Actually, worse than hired help. At least hired help gets paid and can quit. One evening in early March, I was testing a sauce reduction when Lauren walked into the kitchen. She leaned against the counter, watching me. "You know," she said casually, "you're lucky we're giving you this opportunity. Most people wouldn't be so forgiving." I gritted my teeth and kept stirring. "After what you did," she continued. "The lying, the drama, the public humiliation. We could have just cut you off completely." I wanted to scream. I wanted to throw the hot pan at her, but I needed a roof over my head. So I nodded and said, "I know. Thank you." She smiled. "Good. Don't forget it." But I started having a small rebellion of my own. In mid-April, I secretly began applying to restaurants in other cities. Portland, Seattle, San Francisco. Places far away where my reputation hadn't followed me. I used my culinary school credentials instead of recent work history. I got an interview. a sous chef position at a farm-to-table restaurant in Portland. The interview was scheduled for June 20th, 5 days after Lauren's wedding. I booked a bus ticket with my last $60. It was a one-way ticket. If I got the job, I wasn't coming back. For the first time in months, I felt hope. Just 5 more weeks. I could survive 5 more weeks. Then I'd be free. The week before the wedding, everything was ready. I'd spent $3,000 of the family's money on ingredients. They'd reimbursed me, though my mother made a point of telling me how expensive I was. The menu was finalized. The timeline was set. Every detail was organized. I'd made it, almost to the finish line. June 8th arrived, 7 days until the wedding. I was in the kitchen doing prep work for components that could be made ahead. Stocks, sauces, pastry dough. I was actually feeling proud of what I'd created. The menu was beautiful. Lauren's friends who'd come for tastings had raved about the food. Then Lauren walked in. My mother and father were right behind her. All 3 of them looked furious. My heart sank. "What's wrong?" I asked. Lauren's face was twisted with rage. "You sabotaged me," she said. "What?" I had no idea what she was talking about. "The tasting samples," my mother said. "You put something disgusting in them." "That's insane," I said. "The tastings were perfect. Everyone loved them." Lauren pulled out her phone and shoved it in my face. Text messages to her bridesmaids. I tried to poison her. I was jealous and dangerous. The messages were fabricated. I'd never written them. But there they were, apparently from my number. "You're sick," my father said. "We can't trust you with the wedding." I tried to explain. I tried to show them my phone, prove I hadn't sent those messages. But they didn't care. My mother was screaming. My father was pointing at the door. Lauren was crying fake tears. "You're fired," my mother said. "From the wedding. From this house. Get out." I had 30 minutes to pack. I threw clothes into a duffel bag, my hands shaking so hard I could barely zip it. As I was leaving, Lauren appeared in the doorway of my old bedroom. She leaned close and whispered so only I could hear. "I've already called your Portland interview. Told them you're unstable. You'll never work in a kitchen again." Then she stepped back and smiled sweetly as my parents appeared behind her. I walked out of that house with one duffel bag and nowhere to go. Within 24 hours, Lauren had filed a police report claiming I'd threatened her and tried to poison her wedding food. The police came to question me. I was living in my car at that point, a beat-up Honda I'd borrowed from a former coworker who'd taken pity on me. The officers didn't arrest me, but they made a report. The story spread faster than wildfire. Chef tried to poison sister's wedding food. I saw the headline on a local blog. My name was mentioned. My former restaurant was mentioned. The comments were vicious. I was completely destroyed, professionally, personally, financially, emotionally. I had nothing left. I was sleeping in a car in a grocery store parking lot, eating dollar menu items from fast food places, showering at a 24-hour gym I'd had a membership to before everything fell apart. I'd never been lower. I couldn't see any way out. I started researching cities where I could disappear, where no one knew my name or my face. Maybe I could leave the food industry entirely. Maybe I could start over as someone completely different. I was giving up. June 11th through 14th were the darkest days of my entire life. I parked my borrowed car in the corner of a grocery store parking lot and tried to make myself as invisible as possible. I had $12 left to my name. I was eating peanut butter straight from the jar and drinking water from the grocery store bathroom. I couldn't shower anymore. My gym membership had expired and I couldn't afford to renew it. I felt disgusting. I looked worse. My hair was greasy and tangled. My clothes were wrinkled and starting to smell. People looked at me with disgust when I walked into the grocery store to use the bathroom. I thought about calling Sarah, my best friend, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. She'd stopped responding to my texts weeks ago. Everyone had abandoned me. And honestly, I didn't blame them. The version of me they'd heard about was a monster. Why would anyone want to help a monster? At night, I lay in the back seat of the car, staring at the ceiling, unable to sleep. My phone was about to be shut off. The bill was overdue. Soon, I wouldn't even have that connection to the world. I thought about driving somewhere far away, Montana, Wyoming, somewhere remote, where I could just disappear. Maybe work at a diner under the table. Never tell anyone my real name. The food industry was over for me. My dream of opening my own restaurant felt like something that had happened to someone else. Some other Bella who'd been naive enough to believe talent and hard work mattered. June 15th was Lauren's wedding day. I knew because I'd seen the countdown posts on social media before I'd deleted all my apps. I wondered if they'd found someone else to cater or if they'd hired a company. I wondered if Lauren was happy. I wondered if anyone missed me or if they were just relieved the problem had been removed. I spent the day sitting in my car, watching people come and go from the grocery store, families with carts full of food, couples holding hands, kids eating ice cream, normal people living normal lives. I felt like a ghost watching the world continue without me. That evening, as the sun was setting and I was trying to figure out where to drive to sleep for the night, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. "Is this Bella?" a man's voice asked. "The chef?" "Who is this?" I asked warily. "My name is James Hartford. I'm a senior food critic for Northwest Culinary Review." My heart stopped. Northwest Culinary Review was huge, a regional publication with serious influence. Why would a critic from there be calling me? "I attended a dinner party back in October," he continued. "Your sister's birthday. I was a +1 with the Anderson family." I remembered the Andersons. Family friends. I didn't remember noticing their guest. "The meal you prepared that night," he said, "was exceptional. I've been trying to find you for months." I didn't know what to say. The meal at Lauren's birthday party? The one my father had publicly declared substandard before banning me from ever cooking for the family again? "I recognized the talent immediately," James Hartford continued. I made notes. The flavors, the technique, the presentation. It was restaurant-quality food. Better than restaurant quality, honestly. But when I tried to find you afterward to write about you, I couldn't locate any information. You weren't listed at any local restaurants as an executive chef. "I was a sous chef," I said quietly, "at Meridian." "Was?" he asked. "I'm not anymore." There was a pause. "I've heard some rumors," he said carefully. "That's actually part of why I'm calling. I had dinner recently at a restaurant called Lauren's Kitchen. Do you know it?" "My sister's restaurant," I said, my voice flat. "Interesting," he said, "because the dishes I ate there were identical to what I had at that birthday party. Exact same recipes, same plating, same everything. So I did some investigating." My heart was pounding now. "I have some questions for you, Bella, and I have a proposition. Can we meet?" We met the next morning at a coffee shop downtown. I was mortified by how I looked. I'd done my best to clean up in the grocery store bathroom, but there was only so much I could do. James Hartford was in his 50s, gray hair, kind eyes, dressed in slacks and a button-down shirt. He bought me coffee and a breakfast sandwich. I almost cried at the gesture. He told me everything. He'd been digging into Lauren's kitchen for weeks. He'd discovered the financial irregularities first. Lauren had been cutting corners on food safety, using expired ingredients, storing food at improper temperatures. He'd contacted the health department anonymously. "But that's not all," he said. He pulled out a folder from his bag. Inside were printouts, emails, screenshots. "Where did you get these?" I asked, my hands shaking as I looked through them. "I have contacts," he said simply. "The restaurant industry is smaller than you think." The emails were between Lauren and her business partner. They discussed my recipes in detail, how Lauren had been taking credit for everything I created. There were text messages where she bragged about building her business on ideas she'd gotten from me. She called me too stupid to realize what she was doing. I felt sick reading them, but I also felt vindicated. Proof. Finally, proof. James Hartford leaned forward. "I'm writing an exposé," he said, "about recipe theft, about chefs who steal credit for other people's work. Your story is going to be the centerpiece. But I need your permission." "Why are you doing this?" I asked. "You don't know me." "Because what happened to you is wrong," he said simply, "and because talent like yours deserves to be recognized, not stolen." He also told me about the restaurant opportunity. A restaurant group was opening a new concept. They needed an executive chef. He'd recommended me based on the meal I'd cooked months ago at Lauren's birthday party. "They want to interview you," he said, June 18th. Are you interested? I started crying right there in the coffee shop. Yes, I said. Yes. The next day, June 16th, everything exploded. The health department shut down Lauren's kitchen. Serious violations, improper food storage, expired ingredients. They found evidence of food poisoning incidents that had been traced back to the restaurant. 3 customers who'd gotten sick weeks earlier but hadn't connected it to the restaurant initially. The story went viral locally. Restaurant shut down by health department. Then the investigation deepened. Reporters started digging. They found the recipe theft angle. James Hartford published his expose that same day. The article was devastating. He laid out everything in detail. Screenshots of Lauren's emails. Documentation showing how she'd built her entire business on my stolen recipes. He included the timeline. The birthday party humiliation right when her restaurant was taking off. He framed it as a calculated move to eliminate competition and destroy my confidence so I'd never challenge her claim to my work. Public opinion swung like a pendulum. Suddenly people were outraged on my behalf. The comments section of the article was full of support for me and fury toward Lauren. The local news picked up the story. Recipe theft scandal rocks local food scene. Lauren's investors were furious. They'd lost everything. The restaurant was finished. Her reputation was destroyed. She was facing potential lawsuits from customers who'd gotten sick and from the investors who'd bankrolled her stolen concept. My phone, which was somehow still working, started exploding with notifications, voicemails from numbers I didn't recognize. I listened to the first few. They were from my family. Desperate. Panicked. My mother. We need to talk. This is a family crisis. My father. You have to help your sister. She's falling apart. Lauren's fiancé. Please, Bella. Lauren needs you. The wedding cost us everything and now this. They were facing financial ruin. My parents had invested heavily in Lauren's restaurant. They'd taken out loans. The house they'd sold had been to cover debts I didn't even know about. Now they were living in a rental. Lauren's engagement had ended. Her fiancé couldn't handle the scandal. And they wanted me to save them. To publicly forgive Lauren. To help restart the restaurant under my name to rehabilitate the family reputation. I deleted every single message without responding. June 18th, I went to my interview. I was still living in my car, but I'd managed to shower at a friend's house the night before. Sarah had finally responded to my messages after seeing the news. She'd apologized profusely for believing the rumors. She'd let me stay the night, given me clean clothes to wear to the interview. The interview was at a beautiful space downtown, floor-to-ceiling windows, an open kitchen concept. The restaurant group representatives were 3 people, 2 men and a woman. They already knew my story. James Hartford had sent them the article. We want someone with your creativity and resilience, the woman said. We've tasted your food through connections at Meridian. We've read the expose. We're impressed by how you've handled an impossible situation. They offered me the position, executive chef, $90,000 a year plus benefits, creative control over the menu, my own kitchen, my own team. I cried during the interview. I couldn't help it. They smiled and handed me tissues. We'd like you to start in 2 weeks, they said. Is that possible? Yes, I said. Absolutely yes. June 19th, the day after my interview, my mother found me. I don't know how. Maybe she'd been driving around looking. Maybe someone had seen me and told her. But suddenly she was there, in the grocery store parking lot, tapping on the window of my car. I was exhausted from the emotional whiplash of the past week. I considered driving away, but part of me needed to hear what she had to say, so I got out of the car. She looked terrible. Dark circles under her eyes, hair uncombed. She'd aged 10 years in the past few days. Bella, she said, and her voice broke. Please, we need to talk. There's nothing to talk about, I said. You're the only one who can fix this. She was crying now. Real tears, not the fake ones she'd cried for her church friends when she was spreading rumors about me. Please, Lauren is falling apart. The wedding, the restaurant, everything is ruined. You have to help us. We're family. I stared at her. This woman who'd spent months systematically destroying my life, who'd spread lies about me having mental health issues and drug problems, who'd sabotaged every job opportunity, who'd kicked me out of her house twice, who'd stood by and watched while Lauren stole my recipes and then humiliated me for daring to cook. Family, I repeated. Is that what this is? She grabbed my arm. I know we made mistakes, she said. But we can fix this, together, if you just come home. If you help Lauren restart the restaurant under your name. If you publicly forgive us. We can rebuild. I pulled my arm away. She kept talking. The words tumbled out desperately. How they'd lost everything. How my father's business connections had dried up because of the scandal. How they couldn't afford the rental house for much longer. How Lauren was sleeping on their couch, her engagement broken, her reputation destroyed, facing lawsuits. And I felt nothing. No sympathy. No urge to help. Just emptiness where family love was supposed to be. I looked at my mother, really looked at her, and I remembered everything. Every humiliation. Every lie. Every manipulation. The birthday party announcement. The smear campaign through church. The false accusations. Being kicked out with 30 minutes notice. The fabricated text messages. The police report. The phone call to sabotage my Portland interview. They'd tried to destroy me. They'd succeeded. For a while. And now that their house of cards had collapsed, they wanted me to save them. No, I said. Bella, please? I said no. Her face changed. The tears stopped. The desperation turned to anger. So that's it? You're abandoning your family? I've been standing here for 10 minutes listening to you beg for help, I said, my voice steady and calm. Not once have you apologized. Not once have you acknowledged what you did to me. You're not sorry it happened. You're just sorry it didn't work. That's not true, she started. I held up a hand. You had countless opportunities to make things right. After the birthday party. After Thanksgiving. After you showed up at my apartment. After you kicked me out. After the fake poisoning allegations. So many chances. And every single time, you chose cruelty. Tears were streaming down her face again, but I couldn't tell if they were real or performative anymore. I didn't care. I have a job, I told her. I'm starting in 2 weeks. I'm building a new life, and you're not part of it. You can't mean that, she whispered. Watch me, I said. So you're just going to let your sister suffer? Let this family fall apart? You did that yourselves, I said. I'm just refusing to fix it for you. She tried a different approach. We raised you, we fed you, we gave you everything. And I cooked for you for 12 years without compensation, I said. I catered every holiday, every birthday, every event. I spent thousands of hours and thousands of dollars of my own money on food. I put my dreams on hold to serve this family. And you repaid me by publicly humiliating me and then destroying my life when I finally said no. Her mouth opened and closed. She had no response. Do we even know each other? I asked. Because the family I thought I had wouldn't have done any of this to me. I got back in my car. She stood in the parking lot crying as I drove away. I watched her get smaller in the rearview mirror until she disappeared completely. I didn't look back. The next 2 weeks were a blur of preparation. Sarah let me stay with her while I got back on my feet. The restaurant group gave me an advance on my first paycheck to help with moving expenses. I found a small but beautiful apartment 3 blocks from the restaurant. 1 bedroom, hardwood floors, big windows. It was perfect. I threw myself into menu development. The restaurant was called Embers, a name I'd helped choose. Rising from the ashes, it felt appropriate. I hired my team, interviewed dozens of candidates, found talented people who shared my vision for the food. We started testing recipes, perfecting techniques, building something beautiful. July became August. The restaurant's opening night was scheduled for September 1st. The anticipation was building. James Hartford wrote a preview article that generated significant buzz. Reservations started filling up weeks in advance. I was working 18-hour days, but I loved every minute of it. This was mine, my kitchen, my menu, my vision. No one could take it from me. Through mutual acquaintances, I heard updates about my family. Lauren's kitchen never reopened. The lawsuits were progressing. Lauren had moved back in with our parents. Her engagement had ended. The fiancé couldn't handle the scandal and the financial disaster. My parents had sold their big house months ago to cover debts. They were living in a small rental across town. My father's business had suffered because of his association with the scandal. Clients didn't want to work with someone whose family was embroiled in food safety violations and recipe theft. The family was fractured and struggling, and I felt no guilt about it. They'd made their choices. They'd face the consequences. I changed my phone number, blocked all social media accounts, created distance between their chaos and my peace. I was done being their scapegoat, done being their solution. September 1st arrived with perfect late summer weather. The opening night of Embers was everything I'd dreamed it would be. The dining room was packed, every table full. The energy was electric. I stood in the kitchen surrounded by my team, calling orders and plating dishes. The rhythm felt right. The food looked beautiful. The flavors were perfect. James Hartford came for the opening and wrote a glowing review. He described Embers as a triumph of creativity and resilience. He praised every dish. The article mentioned my story in passing, the chef who'd overcome tremendous adversity to open her own restaurant, but focused primarily on the food itself, which was exactly what I wanted. Within 2 weeks, we were booked solid for the next 2 months. The Food Network reached out about a potential segment. Other publications wanted interviews. My career was skyrocketing. Everything I'd dreamed of was becoming reality, and I'd done it without my family's help, in spite of their attempts to destroy me. 3 months after opening Embers, I was closing up late one October evening. The last customers had left an hour ago. My team had finished cleanup and gone home. I was alone in the kitchen, doing a final walkthrough before locking up. It was quiet, peaceful, the kind of silence that feels earned after a day of hard work. I thought about where I'd been a year ago, cooking Lauren's birthday dinner, about to experience the most humiliating moment of my life. I remembered the shock, the pain, the certainty that my family's rejection meant something was fundamentally wrong with me. Now, standing in my own kitchen, I understood the truth. The problem was never me. The problem was them. They'd seen my talent as a threat instead of a gift. They'd viewed my success as competition instead of celebration. And when I finally set a boundary, when I finally said no to being used and unappreciated, they'd responded with a calculated campaign to destroy me. But here's what they didn't understand. You can't destroy someone who refuses to stay down. You can't break someone who knows their own worth. I'd lost everything. My job, my home, my reputation, my family. I'd lived in my car. I'd eaten peanut butter from a jar. I'd been lower than I'd ever imagined possible. And I'd survived. More than survived. I'd rebuilt. Stronger. Better. Free. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I pulled it out and saw an email notification. The address wasn't one I recognized, but the name in the sender field made my heart skip. Mom. Subject line. I'm sorry. I stared at it for a long moment. My finger hovered over the email, ready to open it. Part of me wanted to know what she'd written, what kind of apology she'd finally crafted after all these months, whether she'd acknowledge the truth or still try to spin it somehow. But a bigger part of me, the part that had fought so hard to get here, knew better. Some doors need to stay closed. Some relationships are too toxic to salvage. Some apologies come too late to matter. I thought about everything I'd learned over the past year, about setting boundaries, about recognizing when to let go, about understanding that family isn't defined by blood, but by how people treat you. The people who'd loved me through the worst of it, Sarah and the few friends who'd believed me and stood by me, they were my family now. My team at Embers, who worked their hearts out every night, they were my family. The customers who came back week after week, who trusted me to feed them, they were my family. Biology didn't make my parents and Lauren family. Their actions had forfeited that right. I pressed delete without opening the email. The notification disappeared. The screen went back to my homepage. I slipped the phone back in my pocket. I locked up the restaurant and walked out into the cool September night. The city lights reflected off the wet pavement from an earlier rain. The air smelled clean and fresh, full of possibility. I walked the 3 blocks to my apartment, feeling lighter with every step. Free, successful, happy. Some people spend their whole lives trying to earn love from people who will never give it. They twist themselves into shapes that don't fit, trying to be enough for people who will always find them lacking. I'd finally learned to walk away. And in walking away, I'd found myself. The next morning, I woke up in my own apartment, made coffee in my own kitchen, and got ready for another day at my own restaurant. The life I'd built from nothing. The life no one could take from me. That evening, Sarah came by the restaurant for dinner. We sat at the bar after service, sharing a bottle of wine and catching up. She'd been promoted at her job. She was dating someone new. Life was good for her too. "You look different," she said, studying me. "Happy. Really, genuinely happy." "I am," I said. "For the first time in a long time, I really am." "Do you ever think about them?" she asked carefully. "Your family?" "Sometimes," I admitted, "but not the way I used to. I don't miss them. I miss the idea of what I thought we were, but that was never real." She nodded, understanding. "You did the right thing." "I know," I said. "It took me a while to believe that, but I know now." The restaurant continued to thrive. By November, we'd been featured in 3 major publications. The Food Network segment aired and brought in customers from all over the region. I hired 2 more line cooks to keep up with demand. I started developing a second location concept, something smaller, a cafe maybe, focused on breakfast and lunch. The restaurant group was interested. We had preliminary meetings scheduled. My life was full in ways it had never been when I was consumed by family obligations. I had time for friends, for hobbies, for dating, though I was taking that slowly, for myself. I took a cooking class for fun, something I'd never done before. Learned to make handmade pasta from an Italian grandmother who taught classes in her home. It was joyful, pressure-free, just the love of food without any strings attached. December brought holiday season. Embers was booked solid through New Year's. We created a special holiday menu that was a huge hit. I worked Christmas Day by choice, not obligation, and felt grateful to be doing work I loved. I thought about my family occasionally, wondered if they were together for the holidays, wondered if they talked about me. But the wondering was detached, curious but not painful. I'd grieved the family I'd wanted them to be. Now I was building the life I'd always deserved. One evening in late December, a couple came in for dinner, mid-50s, celebrating their 30th anniversary. They ordered the tasting menu and were effusive in their compliments when I came out to greet tables after service. The wife grabbed my hand. "This was the best meal we've ever had," she said. "You have such a gift." Her husband nodded. "Our daughter is in culinary school. You're an inspiration." I felt tears prick my eyes. "Thank you," I said. "That means everything." As they left, the wife turned back. "Whatever it took to get here," she said, "I hope you know it was worth it." I smiled. "I do," I said. "I absolutely do." Standing in my restaurant on New Year's Eve, watching staff prep for our biggest night of the year, I reflected on everything that had brought me to this moment. 1 year ago, I'd been living in my parents' house, planning Lauren's wedding, trapped in a cycle of obligation and abuse. Now I owned my own restaurant, had my own team, had built a life on my own terms. The journey had been brutal. There's no sugarcoating that. I'd lost everything before I could rebuild. I'd been homeless, penniless, professionally destroyed, completely alone. There were nights when I didn't know if I'd survive. Days when giving up felt easier than fighting. But here's what I learned through all of it. Your worth isn't determined by people who choose to diminish you. Family isn't defined by biology, but by love and respect. And sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is walk away from people who refuse to see your value. When my parents publicly humiliated me at Lauren's birthday party, banning me from cooking and declaring my food substandard, they thought they were putting me in my place. They thought they were protecting Lauren's stolen restaurant by destroying my confidence. They thought I'd come crawling back, desperate and broken. They were right about one thing. I did break, completely. But breaking isn't the same as being destroyed. Sometimes you have to break apart before you can rebuild yourself stronger. The smear campaign, the job loss, the eviction, living in my car, every single horror felt insurmountable at the time. But each one also taught me something crucial. I learned I was stronger than I thought. I learned who my real friends were. I learned that reputation can be rebuilt, but dignity, once compromised, is harder to restore. The discovery of Lauren's recipe theft was devastating. Knowing she'd built an entire business on my stolen work, that my family had orchestrated my humiliation to eliminate me as competition, It shattered something fundamental. But it also freed me, because I finally understood that nothing I did would ever be enough for them. The problem wasn't my cooking or my attitude or my mental health. The problem was that they needed a scapegoat, and I'd volunteered for the role by being helpful and agreeable for too long. James Hartford's intervention changed everything. But not because he rescued me, because he believed me. He saw through the lies and recognized the truth. He gave me a platform to tell my story and the professional connection that led to my current position. But I did the hard work. I showed up to that interview despite living in my car. I accepted the job, despite my terror. I built embers from nothing but vision and determination. When my mother found me in that parking lot, begging for help, it would have been so easy to say yes, to fall back into the pattern, to rescue them from consequences they'd earned. Part of me wanted to. Not because I loved them anymore, but because saying no to family feels fundamentally wrong. But I'd learned something crucial by then. You can't pour from an empty cup, and trying to light yourself on fire to keep others warm will only leave you burned and them still cold. Deleting my mother's email without reading it was one of the hardest things I've ever done. But it was also necessary. Some apologies come too late. Some relationships are too broken to salvage. Some people will only see you as a resource to exploit, never as a person to cherish. Walking away wasn't giving up on family. It was refusing to accept abuse disguised as love. It was choosing my own well-being over their comfort. It was recognizing that I deserved better than people who would destroy me rather than celebrate me. Now, standing here in my own restaurant, I can tell you that walking away was the best decision I ever made. Not because revenge feels good, though I won't pretend it didn't feel satisfying to watch their house of cards collapse, but because it freed me to become who I was always meant to be. Embers is more than a restaurant. It's proof that you can rise from the ashes of your worst moments. It's evidence that talent and hard work do matter, even when people try to steal credit. It's a testament to the power of betting on yourself when no one else will. My team here has become my real family. We celebrate each other's successes. We support each other through challenges. We build each other up instead of tearing each other down. That's what family should be. The life lesson I want to share with anyone who's been where I was is this. You can't make someone value you. You can't force people to appreciate your contributions. You can't earn love from people determined to withhold it. But you can choose yourself. You can set boundaries. You can walk away. And when you do, when you finally put yourself first, that's when your real life begins. Walking away from toxic family isn't easy. Society tells us family is everything, that blood is thicker than water, that we should forgive and forget and keep trying. But society is wrong. Family should be a source of support, not destruction. And when the people who are supposed to love you most are actively harming you, you have permission to leave. You don't owe anyone access to you, not even your parents. You don't owe anyone forgiveness, especially if they haven't earned it. You don't owe anyone a relationship that damages your mental health and destroys your future. The people who tried to bury me didn't realize I was a seed. They thought they were ending my story. Instead, they were just clearing the ground for something better to grow. If you're in a situation like I was, where family obligations are crushing you, where people exploit your kindness, where you're constantly diminished and devalued, please know this. You deserve better. Your talents matter. Your boundaries matter. You matter. And if you have to walk away to save yourself, that's not selfish. That's survival. That's self-respect. That's wisdom. Today, Embers is thriving. I'm thriving. And my former family is dealing with the consequences of their choices. I don't wish them harm, but I also don't feel obligated to save them from problems they created. They made their bed. Now they can lie in it. My life now is everything I dreamed of and more. Not because I have money or success or recognition, though those are nice, but because I have peace. I have authentic relationships. I have work I love. I have freedom to be fully myself without constantly editing or shrinking or apologizing. That's the real victory, not the restaurant or the reviews or the job offers. The real victory is waking up every day knowing I chose myself, and I'd make that choice again in a heartbeat. So here's my question for you. Have you ever had to walk away from toxic family members or relationships? How did you find the strength to choose yourself? I'd love to hear your stories in the comments below. Your experiences might help someone else who's struggling with the same decision. If this story resonated with you, please give it a like. Subscribe to the channel for more stories about overcoming adversity and finding strength in impossible situations. And share this with anyone who might need to hear it. Sometimes knowing you're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. I hope it gave you something to think about. I hope it reminded you that you're stronger than you know. And I hope it encouraged you to choose yourself, even when choosing yourself feels impossible. Remember, you deserve love that doesn't hurt. You deserve family that celebrates you. You deserve a life that feels like yours. And you have permission to walk away from anything less. Wishing you all the courage to set boundaries, the strength to maintain them, and the peace that comes from knowing your worth. Take care of yourselves. You're worth it.